We'll see you back here on the news at 4.
Next stop, Sherry.
And I'll be with you through 4 p.m. So let's talk a little bit about what we have lined up for this first hour that we have here together. We are getting an update on a story that we've talked about for quite some time now. There was a tragic story out of Florida. It rocked the cruise world, essentially. I mean, it didn't stay in Florida, but we're going to check in with our sister station in Orlando. They're going to be joining me with some new information on the murder on board a cruise ship in 2024. Also, a court has found, and this is a biggie, it's like the top trending story on our website right now. A court has found the city of Chicago liable for over $163 million in illegal fines and penalties for city stickers and other tickets. Now, that might sound familiar to you because we were just talking about another class action lawsuit regarding tickets in the city just recently. And in this instance, the judge actually said something many people say quite often, that Chicago residents have been, quote, systematically overcharged. Also, we're going to bring in Fox Business's Edward Lawrence as we prepare for what is likely to be a long State of the Union speech tonight from President Trump. So much for him to lay out to the American public, the economy being top of mind for many people, and especially his trade policies. He's going to be speaking in front of the justices that made a major decision that was a huge blow to his economic policy. So we're going to hear from the president later on this evening. We'll hear from Edward Lawrence, kind of setting up what we expect tonight. But first, we want to go and listen in to a special moment. Governor Pritzker is set to announce plans to revitalize Hotel Florence at the Pullman National Monument and State Historic Site.
Who really does not need an introduction, who understands community, understands partnerships, understands everybody working together on what's best for our community. And he has been a great partner here in the Ninth Ward. He's no stranger. He's been here numerous times. He's a partner, and yes, he brings the checks. Let's Governor Pritzker.
Well, speaking of somebody who does not take no for an answer, Alderman, no, really. I mean, I can tell you from the moment that he and I met some number of years ago, he was asking for things. Community. And we need this. I'll just say this. There are 177.
Okay, a part of listening in means that we have to actually be able to hear it well. So maybe we should log out and try that a link again and see if we could get a better connection. I think it's on their end, but maybe we can get a better connection coming up in just a few moments here. But I want everyone to be able to hear that. You know, we were just speaking with a group on Friday. I believe it was the president there from the Pullman Porters Museum that was talking about revitalizing that area, revitalizing the building. The actual museum is closed right now as they do some reconstruction to this wonderful place that holds so much history for both the city of Chicago and also the nation, the Pullman Porters, this labor union that really started such a movement years ago that we still see the effects of today. And so this is yet another piece of the pie in terms of making what's old new in many ways, but preserving what really matters in that area, and that is the history behind it, and refreshing it so that more people can go and read up and understand the significance of the Pullman Porters for this area. And that takes, and we actually have had Alderman Beal, who was introducing the governor there. We've had him on our morning show talking about the work for this hotel and many other things in that area as you want. If you're trying to revitalize the Pullman Porter Museum, museum, okay, what does that mean? You're trying to bring in more tourists. You want more people to visit that location, that building, to get the history, but that means you have to build up some things around it too, and that's where revitalizing the Hotel Florence comes into play. They need some other things there. They need some shopping there. They need the hotels there. They need the things around the museum that really say, come here, visit, stay a while. And so this is a big piece of that, with the governor announcing these plans to pump in more dollars into this wonderful effort there. So it's been a long time coming. Again, I know that this is something that Alderman Beal has been pushing for quite some time, but getting the governor's help on it will be significant now. Not sure if we have that link back. Okay, let's see if it's a little better now. If so, we'll go with it now.
Work in state government, even though, frankly, she's got a family, she's got a career of her own as a nurse practitioner, so I want to get that right. And as a healthcare leader and somebody that people rely on, and so to bring her in, somebody who really knows the parks, the state parks of this state, somebody who really knows all of the needs of our communities, is coming to work with me. Just really an honor for me to work with her. So I want to thank her for her tireless work on behalf of our historic sites. My partners in the General Assembly, I mentioned Nick Smith, Senator L.G. Sims, who's not here today, but also hugely important. Thank them for helping to secure the investments that were necessary to make this possible. And the team that has made this happen also on the ground is, I'm going to introduce him momentarily, and that's CEO Scott Henry of Celadon Corporation, and President Heather Smith of Art of Culture, and President Mercedes Miley of FAR Associates. And I know there are lots of you in the audience here today that have been a part of this in one fashion or another, so thank you. This is a unique opportunity for us to celebrate our past while also investing in our future. Pullman is a foundational part of both Illinois' and America's history. From the strike of 1894 to the establishment of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters in 1925, Pullman workers profoundly shaped the labor and civil rights movements of our country in ways that we're still benefiting from today. The story of Pullman embodies much of our American story, our economic trajectory, the formation of the black middle class, the enduring struggle of equal treatment, of getting equal treatment and fair wages for our workers. Last week, I gave my annual State of the State address, and I told the story of the Pullman strikes. Workers banding together and walking off the job to protest a 25% wage cut. President Grover Cleveland sending deputized marshals to break the strikes. There was a lot of violence that ensued. I cited the fact that our governor at the time, John Peter Altgeld, stood up against the President of the United States and stood for the workers and the people of our city and state. There are plenty of lessons to be found in that story for today. And I said it last week, and I'll say it again. If we have the courage to confront all the good and the bad, the hopeful and the messy, history has the power to inform a better future for all of us. It's why I've been a student of history, and again, why I so much value what's happening to this space and what has happened in Pullman. That's why we have to, we've put a lot of, preserving, protecting, and updating our historic sites. We've put a lot of effort into that across the state of Illinois, whether it's preserving the memory of the Pullman workers and the strike, whether it's remembering Abraham Lincoln. We have a lot of heroes from the state that we should be lifting up, and places where important things happen that we want our future generations to know. Generations of visitors here can learn about this history. They can take lessons from the past and be inspired by the courage of those that came before us, often in confronting similar challenges to the ones that we face today. And at the same time, this project is a chance to reinvest in this community and to create opportunity for our people. Boutique hotel rooms, fine restaurants and dining, a world-class performing arts venue, and event space. Hotel Florence will again become a destination for visitors, whether they're coming from down the street or anywhere around the world. That's a boost for our residents. That's a boost for workers, for small businesses across this neighborhood and, frankly, across this whole region. As IDNR, the Department of Natural Resources' first public-private partnership for significant capital improvements, this can serve as a model for how government and business can come together to revitalize our communities, foster growth, and preserve our history. I really am very proud to be doing that with you today, and especially proud to be doing so during Black History Month. Thank you all. Thank you for your tireless commitment to learning from our past so that we can improve and transform our future. So now it's my great pleasure to hand over this microphone to one of our terrific partners bringing this history to life, and that's the CEO of Celadon Corporation, Scott Henry.
Thank you, Governor Pritzker. It is an incredible honor to be introduced by you for a project that has such deep meaning for myself and 3 generations of my family that settled here before me. My connections to Pullman are many. After all, I was born here. My mom was born here, same hospital, not the same time. My mom worked at the Sherwin-Williams plant not too far from here. My mom and dad met and fell in love at Fanger High School. My grandma and grandpa went to Fanger High School. My grandmother worked at Gately's department store, and a number of my great uncles worked at the Pullman factory. Now, I did live here too. I was a baby, but I did have a Sunday brunch here at the hotel, and that probably means I'm pretty old right now. But my name's Scott Henry. I'm the CEO of Celadon. We're developers. We do all kinds of projects, but our work in the historic adaptive reuse space is really what's close and dear to our heart. It's really what we're known for. And you know what? We're ready to go. With the help of Sinair, our investor and lender, and another lender, Chicago-based Lakeside Bank, we have already closed and funded a very sizable pre-development loan that will allow us to move very quickly to do all the things that we need to do to be able to start construction as we promised in March of 2027. But I've spent so much time thinking about the future and what we're going to do here. I did spend and reflect a lot on what 1881 looked like when the hotel was first opened up. And it wasn't so dissimilar to what we have today. After all, the city had just grappled with their own pandemic. And like today, politics were pretty chaotic. In fact, the sitting president of the time was a victim of political violence. But really, through it all, the Chicagoans at the time persevered. And Pullman, the factory, really contributed to the city becoming an economic powerhouse that lasted for 75 years. And we see signs of that today here in Chicago with the great work the city's doing, becoming a global leader in quantum. In fact, the Quantum Park is only 15 minutes from here. So there's a lot of exciting things happening in our economy for the future. But there's another thing that I discovered in looking at 1881 and when Hotel Florence opened up. A couple years later, a Democratic governor defeated an incumbent Republican president. Kind of feels like, hopefully, history's repeating itself. And I can think of no better way to celebrate the reopening, the grand reopening of Hotel Florence in late 2028 with that kind of celebration. But like our fellow Chicagoans from yesteryear, we're all going to persevere through the times that we have today, challenges. And we touched on the quantum part of the future here. Just across the street, we have Pullman Park, hosted by Whole Foods and Amazon and others, dining options. Just across the street, we have the Pullman National Historic Park. We have the largest regional sports recreation center in the area, both huge tourist attractions, and we have the Red Line extension coming. So, but instead of our new guests coming here to buy Pullman cars, they'll be treated to a mind-blowing entertainment experience in the former Pullman factory. So I think of this area as becoming the beating heart of Pullman again. And if it's going to be the beating heart of Pullman again, its soul certainly will be the art of culture. And I'd love to introduce to you Heather Smith from the Art of Culture.
Good morning, and thank you, Governor. Thank you, Alderman. Thanks for ensuring we have such a good day today. Thank you, Scott, and everyone here. I'm Heather Smith. I have the honor to serve and to lead Art of Culture. We cultivate intergenerational experiences, leveraging the power of the arts. And we believe in spaces like Pullman, using art to help transform and uplift community is so important. The governor...
Okay, so again, we were just listening into a bit of that press conference there, a very exciting one indeed, and that's why we wanted you to be able to hear at least as much of it as we could get in this time frame about this announcement to revitalize Hotel Florence there in Pullman. Again, as they try to really build up that area around the museum, telling people, tourists, to come in, stay a while, check it all out, the history, the fun. You heard from the governor there who said, you want to celebrate the past, but also invest in the future. We heard from the developers who will be working on the project, who said they will start March 2027 with construction, and they hope to open in late 2028. And you heard and maybe saw the governor getting a bit of a red face there as they were talking about what could happen in late 2028 or what they're hoping for. Also, they talked about a little bit of the history that, this Hotel Florence first opened in 1881, and now more exciting things are happening as we come into this time frame now. And they described it as being a mind-blowing entertainment experience when it's all done, and it will be the beating heart of Pullman. We certainly hope that all of that comes to fruition. But again, a wonderful announcement there about revitalizing Hotel Florence at the Pullman National Monument and State Historic Site. They're going to continue on with that, but there will be a major speech tonight to be given from the president. The State of the Union address has many things that need to be addressed during it, many things that he will be laying out to the American public. And we have Fox Business's Edward Lawrence, who is joining me now to give us a bit of a preview, especially with the economy and trade being top of mind for so many people. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, Anita, thank you for having me. Yeah, it's sort of the lull before the storm here. The president does like to listen to music. We're starting to hear Freebird actually playing from over on the other side of the White House. He does keep the doors open sometimes as he's working and doing this. Now, the White House officials tell me that the theme of the speech is America at 250, strong, prosperous, and respected. That's the theme. There's going to be a heavy emphasis on the economy with this. The president's going to tout his one big beautiful bill, his accomplishments, and he sees that as one of the biggest ones because of the tax implications that are in it. The White House says that they'll talk about the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security for some folks going forward. And the White House believes that people will really start to feel that this year, and that's going to turn around some of the sagging poll numbers related to the economy. The president's also going to talk about Trump RX, bringing prescription prices down. That is where he got most favored nation status for pricing. He got the pharmaceutical companies to raise prices on other countries a little bit and big discounts here in the United States for our medication. The other thing he's going to talk about is the Trump accounts, where the president is very proud of this. He put forward accounts where children born between 2025 and 2028 will get $1,000, and then that grows until they're 18 years old when they can access that money. So we're going to see a heavy economic component to this, among other things the president's going to talk about. Anita?
Yeah, and when you look at the polls, polls, that seems to be the number one thing that people want to hear about, the economy. But there is always that disconnect and the maybe higher stakes when there may be numbers that show the economy is headed in the right direction, but people don't feel it.
Yeah, and what we've heard, anecdotally, what I've heard is, folks are upset about the prices and where they are right now. That happened under the last administration, is what the White House is pointing out. We had inflation at 9.1% at the peak in June of 2021, and now it's down somewhere around 2.8 to 2.4%. So the inflation has come significantly down, but the prices have reset at a higher level, and this is what folks are feeling. So the messaging from the White House shifted this year, and it went from they can't get all prices down because that's almost impossible. But what the White House can do is they can give Americans more money in their wallets. And that's the message here, is that you will be able to see more money in your wallet and you'll be able to afford your lifestyle more, so things will feel more affordable. And that's the message that they hope that Americans will start to ingrain in themselves with the tax cuts that they see that will bring some of that prosperity, according to the White House. We'll have to see how this plays out this year. But last year, the Treasury Secretary says it was all about setting up the economy for success. This year, the Treasury Secretary says it's all about Main Street, which part of that is putting more money in people's wallets.
Yeah, certainly the president says he inherited a mess, but then, at some point in time, it becomes your mess. You have to fix it. Let me ask you this. What impact do you think the Supreme Court justice's decision on Friday had on the speech that we will hear tonight? And how do you think that the tension will be in that room with the justices sitting there?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see that. Historically, Supreme Court justices do go to the State of the Union address, and they are sitting front and center in the front row, right in front of the president. I'm sure he is going to call them out, talk to them directly about their case. He is very upset with that decision. The fact is, though, I've talked to many experts on this. In fact, on Friday, I talked with the St. Louis Federal Reserve president, who told me that they see it as a wash for the economy, because what's going to happen is the president will find other authorities to build these tariffs on. So it's going to be a 1-for-1 is what analysts are looking at with this, meaning one tariff is lost, another tariff is added back, basically at the same value. So the level of tariffs won't change. It's the uncertainty that has been inserted back into this that is the problem for the markets. The markets are up today, but you saw them all over the place on Friday, down big, because the uncertainty is, how are the new tariffs going to be collected? Will the government have to then refund the $175 billion that's been collected already under the tariffs the Supreme Court said the president could not use? So those are the uncertainty factors that are sort of slipped into the markets with this. But as far as the analysts, everybody they I've talked with, it's basically going to be a 1-to-1. So what we're experiencing, last week is what we're going to experience next week in terms of the level of tariffs that are being collected.
I'm so glad that you, touched on the markets, because, they looked horrible yesterday. Today we're seeing some difference. But how much do you think what we're seeing internationally is weighing on them as well, be it Iran or Mexico?
Right. Well, clearly the oil prices have jumped, or the price of a barrel of oil has jumped a little bit with some of that uncertainty, again, with what's happening in Iran and the negotiations that are going on. Those talks are still going on, so there's hope there. But that is the word of the day, really, for the past week and a half or so, uncertainty. And yes, you're going to have uncertainty with oil. That puts pressure on gas prices should that oil keep sort of sliding up. You've got uncertainty over the tariffs being collected. So in the short term, companies are sort of concerned, maybe pull back a little bit, hold off on some spending or some things, hiring that they need to do to see how this all shakes out. But the global uncertainty will cause short term spikes in various things. Gas prices, when you're talking about oil, maybe stuff we buy when you're talking about tariffs. But over the long term, this White House believes that things will settle in. We just have to see how it plays out. But certainly we are in the middle of that uncertainty related to the Middle East and what happens in Iran.
Yeah, and of course, we'd like to know if you're going tonight or what you're looking for in terms of, okay, going into this, the stakes seem to be getting higher for the president. What would be your measure of success tonight?
Yeah, so I'm interested actually in the guests. They have very interesting guests that are coming. I know the men's Olympic gold medal winning hockey team is on its way to the White House right now. They landed in D.C. They're going to be there, or most of them, I should say, are going to be there. It'll be very interesting to see what other guests have come, invited by the president that we may be not aware of, invited by some members of Congress that we might not be aware of as of yet. So I'm interested to see that. On success, the president, it'll be interesting to see how Americans feel after this speech, because the president is going to try and lay out economically, and this is a big sensitive issue for him, is his economic poll numbers, because he believes that he has set up the economy for success. He doesn't understand, and the disconnect on why Americans don't feel that. So it'll be interesting how he phrases this. There needs to be some empathy, I think, from the president to talk about how people feel related to the prices. Also some solutions going forward, which is, I understand from White House officials, we're going to hear some of that on how he believes that he can fix this feeling that folks have and more money in their wallet. So for me, it's basically a feeling that he's going to have to sort of empathize with American people related to the economy, and then lay out for them, this is how things will change for you. And then they could see some tangible things maybe mid to the end of the year. And
just going on a final question here, if we're looking at the approval, disapproval numbers going into the speech, they have changed quite a bit.
Yeah, they have. The president, all the polls have sort of trended down with how the president's performance is going. And a large part of that is the economy and inflation and how people feel about that. So this weighs heavily on this White House, and they have been trying to figure out how to fix that. Again, as I said, they changed the message at the end of last year, beginning of this year, to remind folks that they're going to start to feel like their life is more affordable with more money in their pocket, bringing down prices of prescription drugs, adding the tax cuts that brings back money to workers in their wallets. The president also believes that energy prices, if you get down the price of energy, it'll trickle through the rest of the economy, and some items, most items he believes, will start to come down in price. And we are seeing that, but there's some other anecdotal evidence that other prices aren't going down. For example, the price of coffee is up significantly, I think 20% year over year. The price of beef is also up about 16% year over year. So there are some areas that the White House needs to work on. But again, the president very sensitive about this economic push that he's making and how Americans feel about it.
All right, Edward Lawrence, all eyes will be on the president tonight. Thank you so much for your time and helping us kind of set things up for what we can expect.
Yeah, it should be a very interesting night. Thanks, Anita.
Yeah, very interesting and a very long speech, I'm sure. But we'll be tuned in. Thank you so much. Be safe for the rest of the day. It's 1:27, everyone, and just so that we can kind of, have some perspective for our Illinois delegation. Many of them are skipping out on tonight's in-person opportunity to be there for the State of the Union address. So if you're looking at the screen, and they're panning around, you won't see many of our senators and our congressmen and women. Many of them have decided to sit this out, but we will see a couple, and they are, as Edward Lawrence was pointing out, the president will have his guests that he will have there. Among them may be the U.S. men's hockey team. I do know that the U.S. women's hockey team has declined the offer to go tonight, but the U.S. men's hockey team, you may see Raja Krishnamurthy, Congressman Krishnamurthy, has announced that he will have he will be there and he will have a State of the Union address. It will be a UIC student whose father was detained at Broadview, the ICE facility there, and that will be his guest for tonight. We also know that if Congressman Chuy Garcia is there tonight, and there's an if just because he recently had a medical procedure, but if he is there tonight, he has already sent us information that his guest for tonight will be Mara Martinez, and that is the woman who was shot 5 times by federal agents during Operation Midway Blitz. So there will be a lot going in. As always, when you're looking at the State of the Union address, there are so many different storylines in every direction. So I know maybe not everyone's a political nerd like myself or many of my colleagues, but if you're watching, there are a lot of different storylines that you'll be seeing from both what's there and also who's not there. It's about 1:30 right now. Let's get in a quick break. Give us 2 minutes and we'll be right back. All right, everybody, we're back at 1:31 right now. We've got to get to our trending topic of the day. I mean, everyone's clicking on this one story online on fox32chicago.com. So let's get some more information about it. The court has found the city of Chicago is liable for over $163 million in illegal fines and penalties for city stickers and other tickets. JC Zolna from Zolna Swetland LLC is joining me again, and we've spoken just recently on a very similar case. So, we've got to kind of revisit that because it ultimately comes down to what this judge said about being systematically overcharged for residents in Chicago.
That's right, Anita. Thanks for having me back. We received a very significant ruling last week in one of our lawsuits against the city of Chicago that has found them liable for over $163 million in illegally assessed city sticker tickets and other parking tickets.
That's wild. I mean, but it sounds like a huge number. What will that mean for individuals?
Well, the lawsuit stems from an Illinois law that caps the amount of fines and penalties that the city can assess when it administratively adjudicates parking tickets. And that cap is $250. So what the judge ruled last week was that any fine or penalty that someone paid in excess of $250 should be returned. So it depends on how much each person paid for a ticket. That will determine how much they should be getting back by this court decision.
Mm-hmm. And how quickly?
Well, that's a tricky question. This lawsuit has been pending for 8 years. The plaintiffs in our law firm, we have not sought one single extension in this lawsuit. The city, on the other hand, has basically opened up a blank check to their outside counsel to litigate tooth and nail and delay this case as long as possible, which is why it's taken this long so far. But we're pretty much at the end of the road here for the city. They're running out of options. They really don't have many more choices other than to pay this amount. They can try to appeal at some point, but we already won in the appellate court 3 years ago. So even if they appeal, it would just be going to a court that already rejected all their arguments once already. So they're running out of bullets here.
And you are used to finding these little nooks and crannies where they're getting by with things for years at a time. One of the things that you talked about is balancing the budget on the backs of our most vulnerable citizens. Expound on that.
Well, this case in particular is on point with that topic because, and we cited in our lawsuit a number of studies that were done on who and where these city sticker tickets were being targeted. And quite frankly, they were being targeted in poor and minority communities. That's where most of these tickets were issued. And these tickets were very expensive. They're nearly $500 at the end of the day for a city sticker violation. And oftentimes people would get 2 or 3 of these in a week. And now you're looking at $1,500. People just couldn't pay them. And it resulted in the city of Chicago leading the nation in bankruptcy filings. And there are studies that have shown that spike in bankruptcies were caused directly by city sticker ticket debt, directly from city sticker ticket debt. So what the city has done was they have been trying to raise revenue off the back of our most vulnerable citizens. They jacked these tickets up so high that they literally put people into bankruptcy. And they can't pay these tickets anyways, so the city wasn't making as much money as they thought they were going to make anyway. So it was a lose-lose situation for everyone. The city wasn't getting paid on a lot of these tickets, and they ruined the lives of tens of thousands of Chicagoans.
Yeah, Emmett, that down the line, the trickle down of it all, it really becomes its own cyclical process there. I mean, you mentioned bankruptcy, but I'm thinking, some people, you would have this expensive ticket that would then at some point in time end up with you being stopped for not having the right ticket that you're supposed to have, which then could lead to a person ending up in a legal or judicial type of situation where they end up in jail even. And of course, then if your license is suspended, you can't get to work. I mean, it's a ripple effect.
Yeah, and I mean, that's true. First of all, you cannot, for not paying your tickets, you cannot get put in jail, just to clarify that. But you can lose your vehicle, and that's happened to a lot of people. Tens of thousands of Chicagoans have lost their vehicles due to ticket debt. And a lot of these people, even like our named plaintiffs in this lawsuit, one at the time was like a service worker who used his car every day for work, and they took his vehicle. Another one of the plaintiffs was an Uber driver for a period of time, and the city prevented him from working for Uber because he had unpaid ticket debt. So not only, could he not afford to pay these tickets, but then the city took away their livelihood and their ability to earn money and just live day to day, pay their rent and buy groceries, much less pay the city these exorbitant fines and penalties for failing to buy a city sticker ticket.
Yeah, and so today it's the city stickers. Just recently, you had the $20 million class action lawsuit about illegal ticketing practices, and that was about something totally different.
That was totally different. That involved a totally different type of ticket and a totally different type of illegal practice that the city was engaging in. And I find it strange that the city keeps engaging in all these practices, and they're always to the disadvantage of its residents. It's not like they were caught systematically undercharging their residents for tickets. It's always to the disadvantage of their own citizens.
It kind of makes your head spin. You also had a $40 million class action lawsuit against the city over red light cameras.
That's right. That's true. That happened, I think, in 2018. We resolved that. We won that lawsuit. And it's just been a cycle of, it's almost as if they're engaging in further illegal ticketing practices to pay for their past sins, and it just keeps backfiring on them. I don't know why or who necessarily was responsible for all these decisions that led to all these practices, but they've been proven now over and over again by the court of law that they're doing things illegally, and they should stop.
And as we've spoken about before, then there's the question of, okay, if the city has to do all of these payouts, does that not become the issue with the budget as well?
Well, the city should have never had this money in the first place. State law said that you can't charge more than $250, and they did it anyways. So they took the money illegally, they should have to pay it back. And just because they mismanaged their finances is not an excuse to not pay for their illegal conduct and compensate the people who they hurt.
Oh, I'm not suggesting that at all. What I'm saying is that if this happened over a number of years and then there is a settlement or some type of judgment in one particular year, obviously you're not given that same amount of time to pay it back. So then it essentially becomes, an issue with the budget as well when you have to do massive payouts over and over and over again for things that may go back many years.
Well, the scary part about this lawsuit is that we have tried. I'm a taxpayer. I live in Chicago. I'm a taxpayer myself. I love this city and I care about it. We've tried for 8 years to be reasonable with the city and try to resolve or settle this case in a manner that would not be financially devastating to the city of Chicago. And we've been rebuffed in every case. We've been offered $0, not a single penny to resolve this lawsuit. And the law department essentially gambled with taxpayer money, and they lost.
So do you see, I know the last time we spoke, with the particular practice that was happening that was found to be illegal, you saw that practice had stopped. With this particular lawsuit, do you see any changes that have that are maybe on the horizon, have been talked about, or that have already happened as a result of even this process?
Well, there was a change. When we won in the appellate court 3 years ago, the city amended its ordinances to lower the fines and penalties to comply with the $250 cap. So for the past 3 years, the fines and penalties for all these tickets have already been lowered. And in fact, they admitted, the city's corporation council admitted during the finance committee meeting when they passed these amendments that they were doing it as a direct result of this lawsuit. And they also admitted that what they had been doing was illegal. Yet they've still refused to compensate the people that they've harmed. And I'm sure they'll continue to do so. But in terms of systematic changes, we've forced them to change their ticketing practices already through this lawsuit.
Mm-hmm. And just to be clear, let's say, I want to ask you two questions. One, is there a cap on how much someone could individually owe the city for tickets?
Are you talking about right now? Is there a cap on how much someone would owe on any particular ticket?
Mm-hmm. Like how far it can go up if they don't pay it within a certain amount of time? Is there a cap on, you mentioned $1,500
Yes.
at some point in time. Is there a cap now for how much that ticket could go up?
Right now in the city of Chicago, their maximum amount that they can charge, not only for a fine, but also a late payment penalty, cannot exceed $250. And that's how their ordinance is written right now.
Mm-hmm. And has that been a shift over a period of time as well?
No, that was a change that once they amended their code, this happened in late 2022. It was in November of 2022 when it passed through the city council. So since then, and continuing to today, the maximum that they can charge someone for a parking or a city sticker ticket is $250, including the late payment penalty.
Including the late payment. Okay. And then let's say someone doesn't pay the late penalty. What are the penalties for that?
Well, they could take your car. They could garnish your wages. They could put a lien on your property. They could have the state of Illinois withhold your tax refund. They have all sorts of mechanisms. Again, the whole system is tilted in favor of the city. So they have a number of really extreme ways to get that money from people.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for another update. It's a wake-up call, I think, for all of us about the things that are happening behind the scenes. But thank you for shining a light on it and letting us know what's happening. And again, the court continues to see the purpose in what you're doing, the work that you're doing in finding the city liable for the things that they're doing.
Thank you. I'm happy to do it. It's an important issue to us and our firm to handle these cases, and we'll continue to do so.
All right. Take care. Thank you for joining us yet again.
Thank you.
It is very disturbing to hear about how these tickets can weigh on people over time, and just his statistic about Illinois being one of the top states for bankruptcy, and a lot of that having to do with these tickets adding up for people. Very, very disturbing. But again, today, the court has found the city of Chicago liable for over $163 million in illegal fines and penalties for city stickers and other tickets, thanks to Zolna Swetland LLC for doing the work over the years and staying on top of it. It's 1:45. We're going to get in a 2-minute break, and we'll be right back. 1:47 right now, and we are getting an update on a heartbreaking story that really rocked the cruise world. We found out about a death that happened on board a cruise ship in 2024, and since then things have been relatively quiet as we still didn't have all of the information there. Now a bombshell new development here, so I want to bring in Esther Bauer from our sister station in Orlando to get us up to speed. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it's been kind of silent. We've been hearing bits and pieces, but developments have been few and far between because the FBI, the lead agency investigating this tragic death of Anna Kepner while cruising with her family, they have shared nothing. It's important to note where I am right now. This is a Brevard County courthouse. This is not where the investigators who are leading this case would be. This is not where this case is being filed. So all the information we're still learning about this case is from unrelated family court matters taking place right here in Brevard County. And the big bombshell we're seeing come out filed in this case is that Anna's 16-year-old stepbrother is at least facing one homicide charge, and an additional charge is still redacted. So we know they are at least facing one charge, could be more, but as far as what that redacted charge is, we do not know. And so what's happening now is the father of the suspect is trying to get custody of their youngest child, who is still living with Anna's dad and stepmom here in our county. But just a messy situation. You have family court, you have a divorce case going on, and then you have this beautiful 18-year-old who's on vacation with her family sharing a cabin allegedly with her stepbrother and is found stuffed under the bed. And from then on, like you said, this has captured the world, people demanding justice for Anna, people wanting to know when charges would be filed. And this is the first time we are seeing official word homicide charges have been filed in federal court. So that's what we're tracking right now. And we do know the family is going to be back here in court. We've been at all of those cases, and that's where any new information has been able to come out about what was happening on that cruise. Why were these, two step siblings staying in the same room? Are the parents responsible for what happened? Those are conversations that we've seen play out here in court, and we will likely see playing out going forward.
Now, did the family ever try to say that someone outside the family was responsible for it? I don't remember the specifics of the case in terms of, it always seemed very odd and like this had to be somebody on the inside, but did they ever try to blame it on somebody outside the family?
Not really. The family, and really we got our first even information about this happening from a local Christian school that Anna went to. They were the first ones to post about this tragedy, one of their own dying while on family vacation. The family very early on just posted on Facebook, please respect our privacy. We are working through this, family tragedy. We are trying to find out more about what happened, but they never clearly blamed someone in their family, but they definitely never made it seem like it happened outside of the family. And you can imagine, if you're on that cruise ship and you're seeing reports of a 18-year-old dead, stuffed under a cruise ship bed, you'd be absolutely terrified. But it's important to note when this happened, cruisers were allowed to leave that same day. The cruise ship docked in Miami. They were allowed to get on with their lives, ending their vacation. We never saw a lockdown of this ship where if there was an alleged murderer on the run, law enforcement would likely lock that ship down. But the sources we've been speaking with knew very early on this was a family matter. That's why people were allowed to get off the ship and their vacation. And from then on, the FBI took over collecting DNA, collecting what evidence they could from that ship.
So troubling. And then there's the element of the parents who weren't present when this took place. So there's a father, a stepfather, or a stepfather and a mother, but then you have her biological. Tell me which parents were there, which parents are speaking now that are who were not there at the time of her death.
Yes. The family tree is very complicated, and there's a lot of variables playing into this troubling situation. But we can tell you, Anna was on the cruise ship with her biological father and her stepmother, as well as her biological grandparents. Those were the adults on the ship with her. Now, what we're talking about right now, this unrelated family court battle that plays into this is still a divorce between Anna's stepmother and now the suspect's biological father. Again, the mother is the biological mother of the suspect. And then we know the father, who is the one filing these motions, let's get this other child out of their care. That is the biological father of the suspect. So the biological father, he's the one going to court now saying, I want my other child out of this home now. He was not on that cruise. And it's important to note, he never gave permission for the other children, for the suspect that's now being charged with Anna's homicide. He never gave permission for them to go on the cruise. This also came out in other court filings. He wasn't comfortable with the fact of these kids going on this cruise. This was a blended family. He was already struggling to make contact with any of his children. In court filings, he's blaming his ex for that. So the father that was not on the cruise, but is the father of the suspect arrested and now being allegedly charged with homicide, is the one kind of sounding the alarm, saying, hey, look, you had two parents where one child was allegedly murdered, another child's facing charges for those murders. That happened under their watch. They shouldn't have other children with them under their care right now.
Wow. There's so much to this. And then I'm thinking, I either read or heard something about the parents who at least had custody, whoever the adults are that have custody of the young man who is now the suspect, asking him to leave the home or something like that. Is that correct?
Correct. So as soon as that cruise ship docked, this suspect was allegedly taken to a psychiatric hospital, some kind of medical care, needed to go into the mental state that he was in. So he was immediately taken there, but he has not been welcomed back into the home he was living in since this happened. Again, that is the same home he was sharing with Anna, as well as his biological mother and his stepfather. And in these court documents, we're seeing reports that the parents have said they want to put the, quote, nails in the coffin of this suspect. They, quite frankly, according to court documents, want nothing to do with the suspect going forward. And so that's why we're seeing his father, his biological father, stepping in, trying to shield him, trying to be a parent for him because he's still a minor. He's still his son. But the other side, where he was living with that family, has not spoken to him, allegedly, has not seen him, and has not welcomed him back into their home since the alleged murder on the cruise ship.
And the cruise community is a pretty tight-knit community. So what's the reaction like when something like this happens? And, have you gotten any reaction from people who regularly cruise to these new developments?
So early on, we did speak with passengers that were on that ship, and all they really remembered hearing was there was a medical call and they needed to report to said cabin. So people remembered that, but you think, did someone break their leg? Did someone miss medicine? Was someone just not feeling well? You hear about medical calls often on ships. However, social media took off like wildfire, and there was conversation early on about something heinous happening in this cruise ship cabin. So when the FBI, when law enforcement, when officials were so quiet, there was fear. People saying, if I'm going to go on a cruise with my 16, 17-year-old daughter, they can't leave my side. I'm just going to stay with them. We're going to do everything hand in hand. Where a lot of the times parents feel like, oh, great, my, kiddos can go and do whatever they want in the kids zone, water parks. I can do what I want on the ship. There was fear of parents with daughters saying, I'm just not sure. I don't think I want to book a cruise going forward. Granted, I do feel a lot of that fear has subsided since it's really been documented and we know what happened was an inner circle family matter, but definitely a concerning situation, and concerning for the fact of the entire world cares about getting justice for Anna. She was a beloved teen from our community. She had a bright future. She was getting ready to graduate. And when you're on a cruise ship, you're in international waters. Everything changes when it comes to documenting a scene, getting law enforcement out there, ensuring everything is preserved to build a case going forward. So the big conversation now within the cruise community is the FBI going to ensure justice is served for this victim? We are going to see charges play out. They are going to be able to build a strong enough case against whoever is responsible. And that's what they want to see. They don't want this to get swept under the rug. They don't want the case to be lost at sea. They really want to see what happened, make it to trial, make sure that, whoever is responsible does face charges for what happened on that ship.
Yeah, just a very sad story all around, and one that has, again, so many different legs to it. And my gut honestly drops. It sinks when I even think of, if in a document you're okay saying murder, but you redacted whatever other charge, whatever else happened to this young woman. My gut just sinks to even think what could be redacted there that they weren't okay with revealing to the world. Thank you so much, Esther. We appreciate your time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Take care. It's 2 o'clock, everybody. Let's take a quick break, and then I'll set you up for the 2 o'clock hour. Welcome back, everyone. Now in our 2 o'clock hour here on Chicago Live. Thanks so much for staying with us. We have plenty to get to in this hour. We have pulled in one of our favorite reporters who commonly gets us up to speed when it comes to things in the Catholic community. And she is the senior correspondent at Commonweal magazine. So the bones of St. Francis of Assisi have now been recovered, and they're going to be on public display for the first time ever. And we're going to talk to her about where people will be able to view them, the significance of a moment like this, and where we go from here. That should be a very interesting conversation. Also, speaking of very interesting conversations, we're going to call in our own sports anchor, Cassie Carlson. Now, she is in Indianapolis right now. the NFL Combine is happening this week in Indianapolis. But for the Bears leadership that's down in Indianapolis, there's a whole lot more to talk about. So we know that they're being asked about a lot more than just the players who are there, who could be future Chicago Bears in the not so distant future. But we're still talking about, everybody's buzzing about where the home of the Bears will be in the not so distant future as well. And so we're going to catch up with her while she's down in Indianapolis. We also expect to have a conversation about, or at least be able to possibly dip into a caucus hearing. And this is about Epstein survivors. If we're able to get to that, of course, this is a big moment that they are really pushing to be heard and seen ahead of the State of the Union address tonight. Not quite sure whether that topic will come up in the speech, but they want to make sure, regardless of whether they are mentioned in the speech or not, that people don't forget about them in the midst of all of the other things that will be top of mind tonight. First, though, we want to have a conversation about AI. I always say it's kind of a part of the conversation with everything these days. So for quite some time, we would say, whatever you're looking for, there's an app for that. I mean, literally, there was an app coming out for like everything. But now, is AI taking the place of apps? Gotta ask Eben Brown. He's our Fox Tech correspondent, joining me to talk a little bit more about it. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Good to be back with you.
Great to have you here. You're always giving us an educational moment, if you will, about things in the tech world. What are your thoughts? Do you think that AI is kind of taking the place of apps?
So I think that the people who create AI and are involved in the AI industry and who've invested a lot of money very much want to see AI take the place of apps. What's an app? It's an application. That's what it stands for. And it's a very simple program that accesses something else somewhere, perhaps in the cloud or elsewhere, maybe on your local device, that does the computing power behind the program experience. But the app is sort of the little thing that you deal with either on your phone or on your desktop that allows you to interact with the program. So if it's a photo editing app, for instance, the app itself is just giving you the interface, right? With AI, everyone's been dealing with chatbot AIs for a while now, and they talk to them. ChatGPT is very popular. Grok is very popular. And people ask it questions. They ask it to do certain things for them, usually make a funny photo that they can post online as a meme and whatnot. But the real mode of AI is moving into something called agentic AI. What is the word agentic? It means agent. It means something that can do things for you. And you might say to yourself, well, isn't that what my computers and my phones already do? They do things for me. I tap a little on the screen and it gets it done. Yeah, it does that. But what if this little computer companion could just simply know what it is you need to get done? It knows that, hey, you're probably out of coffee in the cabinet, so it's going to put it onto your Amazon shopping list for you. And, that shopping list is kind of full anyway. Let's just go ahead and order it for you. It already has your saved credit card or debit card or whatever. And it's just going to go ahead. And it knows when you're home because it's connected to your home security system. It knows when you lock the doors and everything. So it knows when you're home. And it'll make sure that it arrives when you're home, because this way you can put all the ice cream in the freezer right away without it, melting outside. So that's agentic AI. And there's a real push among the industry in AI to get there in one way or another. And there's been I guess a revelation of a new type of or a new brand of AI, we'll call it that, called OpenClaw, which allows you to install the AI on your own system, whether it's a spare old laptop or an old phone, or you can get a cloud server for this at your cost, and it runs itself on its own machine essentially. And it doesn't cost you anything for the software, just the computer hardware behind it. But you can connect it to your email, you can connect it to your bank, you can connect it to anything, and it will learn your tasks and start doing them for you. And some of you might say, hey, that's great. It's less brain power I have to exude. It's less time for me to sit there taking care of my own personal business. And yet there will be people saying, wait a second, do I want to give a sentient piece of software access to my finances and perhaps my schedule, where it begins to know things about me? Maybe I don't want it to know things about me. Maybe I consider that an invasion of my privacy, especially because we don't quite know how easily all of these agentic AI models can be hacked by bad people. And do you want them, just as we don't want them to have access to our bank accounts, we also don't want them having access to our schedules and our routines.
Evan, I mean, literally, that's what I was writing down as you were talking. I was like, amazing / scary.
Scary, exactly. Yeah. I'm a self-admit this. I'm a geek. I grew up with Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's still, I think, my favorite show. Everyone wondered and was just awed by the idea that you could talk to the computer and it would know everything about you and it would know how to answer your questions and it would help you in your research. And we're seeing that already, really, with AI. You can ask, say it's ChatGPT or Grok. Ask it something, and it'll ask you follow-up questions. What are you trying to learn? Can I delve more into this topic for you? So on and so forth. That's kind of getting into the Star Trek-y type of computers. That's great. That makes interacting with the internet much easier, much simpler. The more we move into speech interaction, where I'm talking, not just typing, but talking to it, and it responds to me with voice, that means I don't have to sit at a screen. I don't have to punch with my thumbs or on my keyboard. I can kind of have it as a companion, a true companion, if you will, to when I'm doing my other work. But how much of this do you want, or how much do you want this thing to know about you? That's really the big question that most people don't have a great answer to, because yes, we would love for it to take on a lot of the tasks for us and kind of make our days easier, make our jobs easier. At the same time, yes, I don't know if I want this computer making its own decisions about my finances or my medical chart, for instance, because how many of us have apps right now that interact with our doctor's offices and our hospitals, where we have access to our medical records and we can book appointments and order refills of our prescriptions, or book an appointment for an X-ray or whatever it is that we have to do for our health. Do you want AI to know that stuff about you? Do you want AI to have access to, the diagnosis that your doctor came up with? That could be pretty sensitive stuff. And again, which AI would you trust? Do you trust Grok, which is from xAI, that's Elon Musk's? Do you trust ChatGPT from the OpenAI company? Do you know where this other AI is from? Do you know if it's being managed by a company owned by the Chinese Communist Party? The Chinese Communist Party is known for digitally hacking everyone. They've done this for years now, where people download a fun app where they're taking pictures of themselves and making themselves look like old people. Okay, but you just gave some Chinese or Russian app maker a great database of everyone's photographs.
And then isn't Grok already being sued? Isn't there already a lawsuit about Grok?
They're all being sued in some way or another. For instance, OpenAI was involved in a lawsuit in which the parents of a teenager who unfortunately, sadly, took his own life because they were encouraged to do so by the chatbot. And so there's a lot of lawsuits, and there will be more lawsuits as people begin to understand what AI does and doesn't do, and how it can interfere with one's life and one's privacy and one's rights. And then other people will be sued for misusing AI to hamper other people's rights. So this is a whole cascading thing that we just haven't seen the end of. The point being is that AI is not going to go away. And Elon Musk himself has come out and said, hey, there needs to be a framework of regulations here. We don't want to stifle AI development, but we have to make sure it's not abused, and that it's not abused by our enemies, because there are people out there that will abuse it in any number of ways. Yeah. And that can harm us personally. It can harm our society. And that needs to be addressed by lawmakers. Routinely, the law is like 20 years behind the technology anyway, but I don't know if we can afford that this time.
And then I wonder, what are we losing as a society as we embrace more AI. I mean, I think of like friends who say, "Oh, well, you know, my kid got a bad grade on their handwriting test," and the kid was like, "Who's writing anymore?" And you're
Who's
like,
using
well,
handwriting anymore? Yeah, no. My kid was not happy with me as I made her practice penmanship while no one else was. Because at some point you're going to have to write something down, and someone else is going to have to be able to read what you wrote. and you know, back in the day, I had to learn perfect cursive penmanship, and I think that people should learn that stuff. Here's my concern. As AI begins to do more and more menial tasks, do we lose the ability to do those tasks ourselves? And in some cases, okay, fine. But for instance, we work in media. This is coming from our life. I can edit audio, I can edit video in a very professional grade, but AI can do that much quicker than I can now in many ways. So yeah, it's easy to have the AI just edit this, but what happens if I need to edit it myself? Do I remember how to do that? What about the new kid in the newsroom, so to speak? Do they know how to do it? All they know how to do is ask the AI to do it. So I do wonder if we begin to lose critical skills that only the AI ends up knowing how to do, and the next generation of workers, not just, of course, in our niche industry, but in all industries, do they forget, or do they not even begin to learn some of those very basic skills because the AI has taken it over? And perhaps the best example of this that I can give has really not much to do with AI, but many years ago, I did a reporting stint in Iraq, of all places, during the war, and I flew with the military overseas in a C-5, which was an amazing experience. And there's a desk in the cockpit for a navigator, which was not staffed. Why? Because the computer does the navigation. And the pilot told me that, well, they don't even teach our navigators celestial navigation anymore, how to look at the stars and figure out where you are. And I think, shouldn't a military aviation navigator know how to do that? What if the computer breaks, you know, mid-flight, halfway across the Atlantic Ocean? What do you do then? They kind of shrugged their shoulders and they said, just keep flying until we see land. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make me feel good. So again, you know, as these pieces of software become more advanced and can do the things that we do and can do them autonomously when they decide it's necessary, do we run the risk of forgetting how to do this ourselves? And that to me is scary. I think those types of sci-fi movies never end well. You know, we've seen that before. My new catchphrase is Terminator was, I'm going to forget my own catchphrase here. Terminator was a documentary. That's my new phrase. So, you know, I think that we have to be careful. So it's important, I think, parents, make sure your kids simply do know how to add and do long division. We famously in school were not allowed to use calculators because they wanted us to use our brain. And now, you know, my kid has to sign a pledge not to use AI for their homework. And I think that's a good idea, but parents need to reinforce that.
Wow, so much to consider. And it goes well beyond, yes, the apps that we started to talk about, but there's just so much more to consider when it comes to AI. Eben, we always appreciate having you here.
Oh, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Great. Have a great rest of your day. Everybody, too. It's about 2:16. Give us 2 minutes and we'll be back. 2:18, plenty going on around the country, and we'll see what we can get to live. But we want to focus our attention on Indiana right now because there's so many different conversations surrounding the Chicago Bears in that one state. I'm not saying they're going to end up there, but that is where we find our own Cassie Carlson, who is joining me now. She is in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine.
Hi, Anita. Yeah, you mentioned the Indianapolis, Indiana, and all the things that have been happening surrounding the Bears over the last week. It's actually funny because the state capitol is across the street from the convention center where the Combine is taking place, and we all know all the stadium talk that's going on. That's become a very political story, but inside the walls here at the convention center, it's really all football talk, even though General Manager Ryan Poles was asked if he receives text calls about the stadium at all, and he said he was on vacation, ran into a couple Bears fans who were asking him questions, and he basically kind of laughs it off and says, "I trust George McCaskey and Kevin Warren to basically handle that side of business." And so he's like, he doesn't want to get involved in the stadium talk at all right now. It's all about football talk for Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson.
Okay, all right. Clearly, I'm sure they know more than what they are saying, but let's talk about the talent that's on the field. Are you or are they seeing any type of stars from anybody, and what are they there looking for?
Yeah, so not so much looking at specific prospects or anything today. Today is really the first day of the Combine where it's all general managers and all head coaches who are being, walked around the radio row where I'm sitting right now on the other side of the camera behind these curtains. There are a bunch of podiums where they will all talk to local media, national media. We talked to Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson in total 3 times today. So it's been a lot of back and forth of them running around, going through the press junket or car wash, as we like to call it, as there are so many different questions and different angles, whether you're a national reporter, whether you're a local reporter, and just trying to get a little bit out of the coaches and GMs. And it's kind of interesting this year because for the first time since Ryan Poles has been general manager of the Chicago Bears, he comes to Indianapolis to the Combine without a new head coach and without a top 10 pick. So it is a very different experience, I would say, in terms of just the noise and bustle around the Bears because they're in a different position this year. And that's a good position to be in, being that their first round pick is going to be later in the first round, picking 25th overall. And so a lot of different conversations than what we're used to over the 4 prior years to this year for Ryan Poles. And he's dealing with a handful of different issues, I would say, with cap constraints, most notable, heading into this year's draft and free agency.
Talk a little bit more about that. Not just the cap constraints from trying to keep this team together as we know it, but what are the big topics for them right now?
Yeah, so let's start with the cap constraints because, they're about $5.5 million over the cap, which means they're going to have to make some cuts to try and free up some money. They can also restructure some contracts. I think if you look at it, there's about $85 million that they could free up if they were to reconstruct some contracts. But Ryan Poles has some tough decisions to make. If you look at those cut candidates, you're probably looking at Tremaine Edmonds as the most notable linebacker, who would free up $15 million in cap space. DeAndre Swift, running back, is another one who would free up $7 million, although Ryan Poles said when his name was mentioned alongside Cole Kmet that they were hopeful to keep those 2 players in Chicago. So it seems like he has more of an emphasis and belief that they could potentially be on the roster next year, more so than Tremaine Edmonds. And the reason that Edmonds, I think, is one of the most highly considered is not just the money, but also the position. At the linebacker position, we saw the Bears deal with a handful of injuries right there this season. And the good thing in Dennis Allen's scheme and the players they had on the roster was that you saw a lot of plug and play. So someone like DeMarco Jackson be able to step up in Tremaine Edmonds' place and play that position and be effective in it. And he's someone that they could sign for a much cheaper deal and allow them to build in some other spots on the roster. So that's kind of what Ryan Poles is looking at right now. He didn't want to comment too much about what decisions he would be making, which isn't surprising. They still have a few weeks before free agency opens up. But definitely something that's new to him and he has to consider. And then he also has to consider his emotions that come into place because he has a relationship with a lot lot of these guys. He was asked about Jaquan Brisker, safety, who is a free agent. His contract ended. He was his second draft pick ever when he came into the Chicago Bears, and he's like, you kind of got to find a way to put the emotions and the relationships to the side and just do what's best for your football team. So that's one thing that he's looking at right now. The other big topic really today was Ian Cunningham, the former Bears assistant general manager, who was hired by the Falcons to become their GM, but because of the way the Falcons restructured their front office, hiring former quarterback Matt Ryan as their president of football, he was declared as their primary football decision maker, and the Bears did not receive 2 third-round compensatory draft picks, which is written in the Rooney Rule, that typically the Bears would get if Ian Cunningham was hired as a GM job and Matt Ryan essentially wasn't hired as a GM job. So we heard from both Ian Cunningham and Ryan Poles about it. Cunningham said he thought that the Bears should get those compensatory picks. Ryan Poles said they feel the same way about it, and they have been in conversations with the NFL, with the league, to kind of get some answers on why they didn't receive them, because Matt Ryan even came out and said that Ian Cunningham is going to be the primary football decision maker, and so they're just looking for answers on that too. Poles said it's really just how the rule is written, the way the Rooney Rule is written, and although he said they don't hire someone per se because of their skin color, and despite what their skin color is, they're going to always develop that person in that position to hopefully go on and get another job, and that's what he wanted to do for Ian Cunningham. He seems to feel a certain way about it too, because as a person of color himself, he said when he got hired by the Bears to be their GM, the Kansas City Chiefs got a 3rd-round draft pick, one of those compensatory picks, and he said that turned into a player, so they drafted a player in the 3rd round, and then you're kind of watching that player play, and he's kind of like, that's kind of interesting. It's like, that player was because of me. And he didn't seem to feel so great about it, but he's like, we're still going to make sure we develop these guys who are in our roles in the Bears to get bigger and better jobs, and so that'll be an ongoing conversation as they hope to get some answers from the league.
That's tricky indeed. Now, there was a conversation earlier on some of the sports shows about Tyson Bagent. Has that come up?
Oh yeah, Tyson Bagent, the former undrafted free agent. He came out of Division II, Shepherd University. The Bears signed him after the draft, and then they extended him this past offseason. A backup quarterback with aspirations, as he has spoken about himself, and made clear that he wants to be a starter in this league one day. And just because of the quarterback draft class this year, it's down. It's not as good as it's been in years past, and so the market for quarterbacks is not as good if you're in the market for one, especially looking at a rookie. And so Ryan Poles said they were expecting to get some calls about Tyson Bagent, and they have received a few calls about him. And he's like, that's another one where you're kind of like, wow, they love him. They found him. He was a diamond in the rough. They were able to develop him. Ben Johnson has been a very vocal proponent of Tyson Bagent potentially being a starter one day, and knowing that he can do so much good and believes he can compete in this league. I sat down with Ben Johnson one-on-one, which you can hear on Fox Chicago's digital platforms, and we were talking about Tyson Bagent, and he said, you know, his preseason in years past, Ben Johnson has always had the same game plan that he has run in every preseason game. And he said for the first time probably ever in his career that he can remember, Tyson Bagent, who would be the starting quarterback in preseason games, completed like 60 to 70% of the passes. He says that has never happened before, almost to the point where he had to like scrap up the preseason plan and make it more challenging. So that just speaks to who Tyson Bagent is. He is a grinder. His practice habits have always been touted. I think Ben Johnson sees himself in Tyson Bagent in a lot of ways, and Tyson Bagent has said before he sees benefit to being in Chicago and learning under an offensive mind and being coached by someone like Ben Johnson. But Ben also said that he feels like he is one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. And so if the Bears turn someone in from an undrafted free agent out of Division II university to, I don't know, a 3rd or 4th round pick, they're definitely getting a return on their investment. So that's something they're going to have to work through.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the draft class. You said it's not looking so good for quarterbacks. So where are we expecting to maybe see a glimmer of hope out there on the field when they do start to get into some of the, some of the different activities for the week?
Yeah, so luckily it aligns a lot with what the Bears need. I think everyone looks at the areas of need for this Bears team, and most of them are focused on the defense. We know that they have no safeties on their roster right now because Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker are both free agents. We also know, just looking at how the best teams in the league operated defensively, they had a lot of pass rushers, edge rushers, defensive tackles, different guys on the line. People will say games are won in the trenches, and the Bears just lack that a lot of the times. And so Ryan Poles, Ben Johnson all reiterated that it's a pretty deep draft class at the edge position. They also said, given the fact that they are drafting at 25th overall, they still believe in drafting best player available. And Ryan Poles said that might seem like a little bit of a luxury because we do know that we have different spots that we still need to fill on this roster to be a championship caliber team. He says he feels like he's learned in his past that you just can't pass up on those really good players. And we know the Bears had the best rookie draft class last year with guys like Colston Loveland, Luther Burden, Ozzie Japillo. And so it really does align with a lot of their needs. But I still think that the way Ben Johnson operates, wanting to get, diehard football lovers in their locker room, Ryan Poles is reiterating that they will take best player available. And there are still a lot of areas of need. So if they cut Tremaine Edmonds, they're in the market for needing a linebacker. We know, again, they need safeties. They could use a left tackle because Ozzie Japillo is going to be expected to be out deep into next season. Who even knows if we see him play next season? And that would complete the overhaul of the offensive line. And so there's so many different areas that the Bears could use to bolster on this roster still, where I think they feel like they are still in a good spot to make an impact pick.
Cassie Carlson from Indianapolis, where they're maybe not trying to touch on the stadium debate, but definitely having to parse through.
They don't want to answer those questions in the convention center, at least.
I'm sure they're going to be asked them regardless, but thank you so much for your time. We'll see what comes out of it, and we'll be checking back in with you frequently, I'm sure.
Thanks, Anita.
All right, take care. It is 2:30. Our next guest is already on the line, so let's get in a 2-minute break, and we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, everyone. 2:32 right now. And goodness, we haven't spoken with our next guest in a while, but she is always so informative when it comes to things in the Catholic community. I want to go ahead and bring in Heidi Schlump. She is the senior correspondent at Commonweal Magazine. Thank you so much for your time.
Great to be with you, Anita.
You know, your background is just beautiful behind you.
Well, I'm reporting from home, but I wish I was reporting from where we're going to talk about in Italy.
Okay, so let's get to this. The bones of St. Francis of Assisi will be on public display for the first time. How did this come about?
Well, this year is a very auspicious year in that it's the 800th anniversary of Francis's death. And so the Franciscans in Assisi, where his body is normally kept but closed in a crypt, have decided to bring the bones open. They're in a plexiglass coffin, and people can walk by and see them. They're expecting up to 500,000 pilgrims over the course of a month.
Wow. And how significant is this? I mean, talk about just the moment that we're in that you just mentioned, but how significant is this?
It's very significant. So there's kind of a story about his body that it was initially buried and then hidden because there was some concern about trafficking in relics, which are the pieces of saints' body or parts of their things that they've owned, which Catholics venerate and considered holy. But they moved his body and hid it in the basilica that was built to once he was named a saint. But then it was discovered eventually, but only has been shown publicly once in I believe in the 70s or 80s, and that was only to a limited number of people. So this is really the first time since his death that it's being open to the public. You had to have a reservation, and they're putting hundreds of people per hour through the church in order to be able to have a chance to see this. It's really not just a once in a lifetime opportunity, but a once in 800 years opportunity.
Oh my goodness. And I'm seeing that nearly 400,000 people have already registered just that fast.
Yes, and it's just for 1 month.
Goodness. That's a lot. Do we expect there to be space for many more?
Well, I think it's getting rather filled up in terms of the reservations. And I know that one thing I checked was for people who are not able to get on a plane, there actually are relics of saints, including St. Francis, in other churches. So his entire skeleton is what's being shown here in Assisi now. But I even looked up, and there are a few churches in Chicago who have some sort of relic, either what we call a first-class relic, which would be a piece of the body, or a second-class relic, which would be something that the person owned or wore. Usually it's a piece of cloth from their clothing. So there are even a couple churches in Chicago that have relics from St. Francis, and the University of Notre Dame's Basilica has some too.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, give us an education about the importance of St. Francis to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I mean, people may recall that the Pope before Pope Leo was named after St. Francis, the first Pope to be so. St. Francis is probably one of the most popular saints in the Catholic Church, if not the most popular, maybe after St. Mary, the mother of Jesus. And he was born to in a wealthy family, but gave up all of his riches to follow Jesus and to be a preacher and to care for the poor. Many people know that he has a reputation for having been a friend of animals, and he's the patron saint of animals and of the environment. And so people may know in October 3rd is the anniversary of his death. Many churches have a blessing of the animals where people can bring their pets to the church and their animals are blessed, honoring St. Francis, who was known to be a friend to the animals. But he was also known, he was a deeply spiritual person and lived a very simple life and was very much about caring for the poor. I think we could really take his messages to heart today.
Yeah. Assisi is a place where people make pilgrimages very often. This wouldn't be the first time, we've really talked about a large number of people going there. Can you talk about the effect of that on the community as a whole, on the economy there for these massive pilgrimages?
Yes, I was lucky enough to go to Assisi 2 years ago on a little pilgrimage of myself with a couple friends and colleagues. And it's a beautiful place nestled in a hill in the Umbria section of Italy. There's a number of churches worth visiting there in addition to the Basilica. There's a Basilica for St. Clare as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful old town, and it's small, and it has very ancient, very narrow, very small roads. And so, the descent of a lot of pilgrims, as it will be over this next month while the bones are being displayed, will be both very good for the economy in terms of a lot of pilgrim dollars coming to Assisi, but I think it also poses some practical issues. Now, they have made it so that tour buses can stop sort of halfway up the hill and drop people off. But yeah, it's definitely a harder place to get around. It's a very walkable place, but you have to get up there first to do the walking.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen a lot of people go there for Acutis as well? I mean, that he's fairly new as a saint.
Sure. So Saint Carlos Acutis is a young man who died of leukemia recently and was recently canonized as a saint. Some call him the saint of the internet because he was a young person who tried to spread the news about the church and about the Eucharist using online methods. His body is also in a church in Assisi, and I was able to see that when I was there 2 years ago. He's kind of preserved similarly in a glass case. He has a silicone mask over his face, but it does sort of preserve the look of his face. And he's a young person, so I think he was quite young when he died, and so he's very much speaking to younger people in the church who I think have a lot of enthusiasm about him, and the fact that he used the internet to evangelize.
Yeah, it really is a marked moment of change in the church. And yeah, obviously he kind of symbolizes the things of the future. But relics have always been something that have been very important to the Catholic Church. Why is that?
Yes, I was telling my daughter about this story, and she kind of went, "Ooh," and it sounds like something that can be kind of morbid. But the way I explain it is, if you've lost someone that you love, maybe you go to the cemetery and you feel closer to that person by being where their remains are, or maybe you still hang on to something that they owned or wore because it makes you feel closer to that person. Well, that's what relics are in the Catholic Church. It's something to connect us to holy people who have gone before us. And Francis himself was somebody who was very comfortable with death. He called death sister death or sister bodily death. And so I think he would be okay with people venerating his relics as a way to remember, what his life was about, and to maybe carry it forward, like you said, in a very changing church.
Wow. And this has been a year of a lot of change. So what has it been like for you on your beat?
Well, yes, 2025 was a major year for the Catholic Church in terms of the death of a very beloved but also controversial pope, and then the conclave to elect a new pope, not only the first one born in the U.S., but from our own town here in Chicago. So yes, it's been a very exciting time to be covering the church, and I think there's a lot of hopefulness with Pope Leo. He's been very outspoken in that he's carrying on many of the things that Francis was trying to do in terms of focus on immigrants, focus on the poor. Also, our bishops in our own country have been speaking out about some of the things that have been happening here, specifically around the detention of migrants. And so there's been a lot for me to cover, that's for sure.
That is for sure. Now, don't be a stranger. We like to call on you. So it's been a while since I've spoken with you, but I'm sure we'll be calling back on you again soon.
Happy to always join you. Thanks again, Anita.
Thank you so much for your time. It's 2:42, everyone, and she is just a wealth of information. It's always good to be able to find out kind of the nitty-gritty things from people who do this day in and day out. And this, when it comes to covering the Catholic Church, she is just an expert at it, and that's why she is a senior correspondent for Commonweal. So we really appreciate being able to call on her today. Let's take a 2-minute break, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everyone. It's 2:46 right now, and boy, was this next conversation. It came from a moment that really took our breath away this morning, hearing about a shortage of estrogen patches for women. And you think about the rise of hormone therapy and more conversations about menopause, perimenopause, and all of those things. And then you hear something like that, you're like, whoa, what's behind all of this? So we brought in Northwestern menopause expert, Dr. Lauren Stryker. Thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate being able to call on the folks who know best.
I'm glad to be here.
So what were your thoughts when you heard about a shortage of this estrogen patch?
That's correct. I mean, this has been going on for a little bit. And while people are saying, oh my gosh, this is because of this new surge of popularity of menopausal hormone therapy after the black box warning was removed and so many people talking about hormone therapy. But truth be told, that's probably not what's behind this shortage. It's probably more related to supply chain issues. We find this in a lot of pharmaceutical companies in this country with a lot of different products. Keep in mind that the ingredients and the products themselves are generally produced overseas, and we are dependent on what's happening in those countries in terms of tariffs, in terms of factories, etc. So while yes, there is a renewed interest in terms of hormone therapy, we're not seeing it in other menopausal hormone therapy products. You know, the patch is not the only form of hormone therapy. We have many, many safe, effective ways to give menopausal hormone therapy, including other transdermal through the skin products, such as gels and sprays and a vaginal ring. We have pills. This is the only product that we're hearing about the shortage, which again speaks more to supply chain than it does to sudden interest in hormone therapy.
Now, would someone who has had this patch, though, be able to easily transition to something else if when you do have a shortage?
Yeah, potentially. It depends on why they're using the patch. So when we think of terms of who uses an oral estrogen versus who uses a patch, there's a lot of different reasons someone may choose a patch. First of all, maybe because medically it's safer for them. We know that women that use transdermal estrogen do not have an increased risk of blood clots, liver problems, gallstones. So there's a medical reason why someone may choose a patch. Someone, it might be a personal preference. Someone, quite frankly, it may be because that's just what they were offered. A lot of doctors are not menopause experts. They think everyone should be on a patch, and they just prescribe patches to everybody. So if someone needs to be on a transdermal estrogen, but cannot get hold of their patch, she's got a lot of options. Number one is to look at a different kind of transdermal estrogen. I mentioned that there's creams and sprays and even a vaginal ring. One of the issues with that is insurance coverage. It's not always covered. If someone really needs to stick with the patch, she might try using a different brand, maybe even go to a lower dose and use 2 patches instead of 1. You know, it's something that she really needs to work with her prescriber with to see what her options. And then of course, some women are candidates for an estrogen pill. A lot of people think, oh no, you should never take a pill. And that's just simply not true. It's really only women who are at risk of blood clots. So there's that, and then there's the cutting the patch. You know, should you cut the patch? That's what a lot of women are asking is, well, what about just cutting it in 2 and making it last twice as long? And that depends on the brand of patch, because some patches can be cut, even though the manufacturer won't tell you that. But there's something called a matrix patch, in which the estrogen is embedded throughout the patch. And then there's something called a reservoir patch, where it's like a little pool. So if you cut the patch, then it may leak out. But the point is women have a lot of options. They don't need to just say, oh, I guess I'm out of luck.
And is it, there are so many questions I have for you. Oh my goodness. I hope we get enough time with you for me at least to be able to get through a part of them. But let's talk about the demand for the patch. I mean, you mentioned that some doctors, that's just the first thing that they offer to people, or the only thing that they offer to people. So right. Is the demand from that, is that causing this too? Is that a part of what we're dealing with?
It may be. I mean, it's an excellent point, and we don't really have those numbers. You know, there's a lag time between when prescriptions are actually written and when we get documentation of how many prescriptions are written. But certainly that's a part of it. I think the other piece of it is a lot of women are now depending on telehealth to get their menopausal hormone therapy, and many of the telehealth companies are primarily prescribing patches. They're not giving women other options. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, there are many doctors that's quite frankly all they know. They're new to the menopause hormone therapy world. They're told, well, patches are safer. They get comfortable with patches. That's what they prescribe to their patients. And then if suddenly they don't have the patch available and they have to switch to another transdermal or even an oral product, they're not comfortable with that. Because in addition to being familiar with these other products, you have to know what are the equivalent doses. If someone is on one particular dose of a patch and then suddenly you switch them to a spray, do they spray once? Do they spray twice? Do they spray 3 times? These are all things that a menopause expert is going to know, but someone who only prescribes patches may not be as comfortable.
Yeah, and when you talk about comfort levels and the lack of menopause experts and even the fact that insurance doesn't cover some of the things that may be helpful for women, like, why do you think we're still even having these types of discussions in 2026?
Well, that's a loaded question, and there's a lot to unpack there, because certainly we can talk about why there hasn't been an emphasis on women's health across the board, and menopausal hormone therapy is at the top of that list. But certainly a lot of this does go back to the Women's Health Initiative, that study that came out more than 20 years ago, that really, because of the media coverage of that, really put the fear of hormone therapy in so many women and so many clinicians, such that if you look at people that are practicing today, they never learned about hormone therapy. So they're just playing catch up now. And they're learning about this, if you will, on the fly, instead of someone like myself, who's been prescribing hormone therapy literally for decades and has a real familiarity with it. So we really have a lot of work to do to make sure that not only women know that they have multiple options, but also to get clinicians out there comfortable with prescribing all of those options.
And I launched into a lot of, weighty questions for you about this particular topic, but let's take it back to the rudimentary level. For those of us, especially women, I had someone around me that was like, "What's peri?" Because I was saying perimenopause so much, so they were like, "What is peri?" So it seems like, second nature for many of us. But if somebody is new to these types of conversations, just give them a general overview of perimenopause, menopause, those years of life and what happens.
Absolutely. Let me make this very, very simple. We have basically 3 important phases. We have the reproductive phase, when women are pumping out estrogen like crazy. These are the baby making years. And then we have menopause, which is essentially your body is no longer making estrogen, whether your ovaries have been removed or they've just wound down, or maybe as a result of chemotherapy, but they're no longer making estrogen and they're never going to again. And then we have perimenopause. Perimenopause is that period of time when your estrogen levels are up and down and all over the place, meaning your ovaries are still producing estrogen, but it's a roller coaster. And the only thing that's predictive about perimenopause is that it is unpredictable. The hot flashes come and go. The vaginal dryness may come and go. The insomnia may come and go until your body settles into that post-menopause phase where they're no longer making estrogen. And a lot of people say, I'm done with menopause. You're never done with menopause, because you're in menopause until you die, because menopause is no longer making estrogen. But a lot of the perimenopause symptoms and early postmenopause symptoms don't necessarily last forever. On average, we're looking about 7 years. In Black women, it's more like 10 to 12 years. Asian women, it's shorter. And some people, it's forever. Everyone's menopause story is different.
Doc, I'm just sitting here shaking my head. It's hard being a woman. Oh, boy.
There are solutions. It's hard, but it's also a good time to be a woman, because we know a lot about this. When people say there hasn't been research, that's not true. There has been research, and menopause experts can really help women navigate through this, so that not only do they come out okay, but they come out ahead of where they were before.
Well, let's leave on a positive note. Yes, I thank you for turning my wheels around here, because I was going down a dark road. But what does give you hope about the moment that we're in?
Yes, it should.
Looking forward, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope is that we're having this conversation. I've been trying to have this conversation for decades, and people weren't all that interested in talking about it. People didn't want to hear about it. And now, for a variety of reasons, this conversation is loud. It is everywhere. And this is what gives me hope, is that we have the opportunity to have this conversation so that we can give women solutions, and solutions that are going to be meaningful and that are going to have a major impact on their quality of life. We hear a lot about length of life. I'm more about wellness and quality of life.
Yeah, quality, quantity versus quality. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise. We certainly appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
All right, take care. 256. I'm so glad we got to turn that around because I was sitting here like, oh, goodness grief. Forever, ever. Let's take a quick break, everyone, and then I'll be back to set you up for our 3 o'clock hour. All right, welcome back, everyone. 3 o'clock on the dot here. Welcome to our final hour of Chicago Live. We appreciate everybody that's been with us since 1 o'clock. And if you just tuned in, we'll be here until right around 4 o'clock. So that means there's plenty more to come in this final hour. Let me tell you a little bit about what we have. We're going to talk about job recalibration before we get out of here today. Very interesting topic here as we see a changing jobs market and new data that's been coming out over the last several days and weeks, of this new year here, and this notion of how to stay put. How stay put behavior is masking deeper workforce risk. We have an expert who is going to join us to talk about some shifting that we're seeing in some of the data that they're getting in. Also, we hope to have our own Cassie Cronus zooming in from wherever she is out there. She's gathering information for her story today. I always say there is an AI component to just about any discussion that we have these days, and she's looking at the U.S. Postal Inspection Service and how they are helping to investigate when it comes to AI being misused to really take advantage of a lot of people. We'll also talk about mortgage rates. We have some good news on that front if you are in the job or in the housing market. But we're going to start here with a conversation about the Black Film Photo Project. They are doing wonderful work, and they said that they are seeking West Side families right now to really look across generations here, preserving some history in the city of Chicago. I want to welcome in their representative to speak with me. Thank you so much for your time, both of you.
Hello, thank you so much.
Great to have you here. I believe our sister on the left hand is muted. Let's get you off of mute there so we can hear you as well.
Ooh. Thank you. Yes, I was just saying thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Glad to have you both. I've heard a little bit about your project, but tell everybody about what you all are doing right now. And please state your names, each one of you, as you're speaking.
Sure. I'm Chinyere Achebe, co-founder of Black Film Club Collective.
And I'm Troy Martin, the Part 2 co-founder of Black Film Club Collective.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Tell us when you started this work and what it's all about.
Sure. Yeah, we began in 2020, starting as a club for the Chatty Cinephile, bringing folks together to watch film and have conversations around it. And it grew into this collective where we now have an opportunity through a residency program with SAIC to do this project, which is a vernacular archiving project called Making Meaning. And I'll toss it over to Troy to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like Chi said, we just this community has just kind of grown over time, from a film club into a full-blown collective where the work has just deepened in the way that we like to tell Black stories. And so when we had this opportunity to go into this residency with SAIC, we've been thinking a lot about this idea of archiving Black history, the vernacular, which is everyday stories, everyday life of just, African American and BIPOC people, right? When you think about those birthdays or those Christmas holidays, home movies, homecoming parade, prom, those things of just the standard things, or like the picnic in the park that's recorded, that everybody is a part of that block party. We feel like these stories are important. And then also we wanted to think about who are these families behind these stories and what parts do they play in these neighborhoods, which our residency is focused on the West Side community specifically, which has, we felt, historically been underserved and undercaptured in this same vein. And so we wanted to make an intentional effort to actually do some of that archiving and preservation through our project, which is leading us to our Saturday Fine Lines community portrait shoots, which will take 15 families, multi-generational, ages, and actually have some storytelling archive, oracle sessions, as well as just have a great family photo shoot, which will be shot by King Cook, who is also
Yeah, we
a West Side
have to
resident.
put that in there. You know,
Hmm.
the wonderful Ken Cook will be working with us, and we'll be at the. I don't know if you all have had an opportunity to go there, but Monday Coffee. Oh my gosh, favorite coffee shop that has become our community coffee shop, and so we'll be having it there in the North Lawndale community, which also the SAIC Tower is also in North Lawndale. So yeah, we'll be keeping it home. So it'll be great.
I love it. And, tell me what it does to you all to hear the stories and to know that you are preserving a whole, a piece of the whole for the city.
Yeah, I've been doing the like preliminary calls to the families, and I have these like standard questions that I'm asking, and it's been really cool to hear some of their stories. And not only that, not only are we collecting their stories and taking their photos, but we're also inviting them to bring in an heirloom and to hear them talk about the family Bible that has the duct tape on it, or I'm bringing in a vinyl because my family's related to the Staple Singers, or I'm bringing in a blanket with my grandmother's favorite scripture. It is something about hearing those stories that calls you into this sense of like responsibility and urgency to really lean into what's happening in a way that is like, oh no, let me actually actively listen here. Not to say we weren't before, but it's just a different type of activation that we're called into, and I love it. It's the perfect time to be a good listener because we need each other. We need each other. We need to listen in that way. So it's been feeling really special, really special.
Yeah,
How about you, Troy? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
expound on that a little bit more, the timing of this.
Yeah, it's like we're in a time where we're being called to be very technologically savvy, and we're being called to be more, have this somewhat connection, but also disconnection, where they're making it easier for us to connect via phones or apps. However, human connection is so important, which is why Monday Coffee, because hey, let's hang out at the coffee shop, the local coffee shop. Come back, let's talk, let's have conversation. And this feels like an important time for us to get the juices flowing again in this one-on-one interaction or in this connection. And not only that, the connection piece, but the connection with family, right? Like bring your family out. We intentionally wanted it to be multi-generational so that not only is it for the niece or the nephew, but we want to talk to your auntie too. We want to talk to your grandmother. We want to talk to your grandfather, right? Like Troy, do you have anything to add
Yeah,
to
and
that?
I'll also say I think in a time where there are powers that be, in a state of erasure as it relates to just the culture, right? I think books are being removed. I think education and this idea of just family lineage and people taking up space in communities being forgotten, I think that's a real thing that's happening. And I think that's also sitting in the back of my mind is also this responsibility that we have. And it's been extremely humbling, and also Chi spoke to almost a feeling of responsibility that the community has had in reaching out to us, right? I think the response has been incredible from people wanting to get involved, and even on my end it's been just a really fulfilling period just to even talk to some of my friends, and other people who want to participate and get to know them in a different way, and like the amount of history that they have, right? Because I think we have to give agency to these places and understanding and have some type of record of these lineages and these families being here, because it says something about how we existed during that time frame. So I think me and Chi are both feeling that calling in different ways, but also. Mhm.
And I'm surprised you didn't bring up the photo book. At our opening reception,
Yes.
we had our photos there because we've been leaning into talking to our family. So all the way around.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder if some people, in agreeing to do this, will even find out some new things about their own families. You know, we're always going in so many different directions and at such warp speed that that moment to sit down with your family and actually hear about some things. Sometimes somebody says something, you're like, when did that happen?
Absolutely. I've somehow become, the new family archivist and record keeper. Just by osmosis of working on this project, I had a conversation with my mom about it, and she said, I somehow inherited every photo book, for the past 70 to 100 years of family history. You can have it, and so now I find myself, diving deeper and learning new things about my family history. So it's a that I think that's the gift that I think that we're trying to accomplish in this
Yeah.
residency is really giving people the authority, or not even giving them, but allowing them or letting them know that they have the authority to actually be interested in this, and that it does, have meaning, right? Like that grandma's, homage to all the relatives in that portrait gallery in the hallway. That's something to ask questions about and understand, right? So we can have those stories
Yeah.
later on.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so Saturday, you're going to have people out from 1 to 5 p.m. there at the coffee shop. This is on West 16th Street. What happens after that?
Yeah, after the coffee shop experience or the community portrait, I don't know why I called it coffee shop, but after the community portrait, March 7th, we'll be doing a workshop, which is an archiving workshop for people to listen and understand what they have, the heirlooms they have, the pictures they have. We're also calling for video footage. Maybe you have that family reunion, maybe you have that graduation or that prom send off, whatever. I just heard from a woman who said that they have been doing class reunions with Marshall, and they're like, hey, we got a lot of footage from our high school. So just hearing and listening. So we are giving people an opportunity to understand what they have and also talk to archive specialists that can help them to understand how to digitize it, how to keep their information safe, and ways to take it from that photo album that's fallen apart and put it into a system or into an archiving process that can live on outside of the tactile, tangible piece of it.
And in an equitable way as well. I think that's something we're thinking very intentional about, is making sure that when we come in, let's figure out ways that families and people don't feel ostracized from the process. Like, hey, you can do this. If you have a Gmail account, it may be like, a Google One, account,
Right.
So I think we're also thinking about, how to do that in that manner too, but feel pretty
Yeah.
good.
So March 7th, that's happening. And then March 28th, we're going to do another call. In between the sandwich, we're still getting all the details together. We are doing a film, which will this month we showed down in the Delta that talked about the migration from the city into the South. And so we're going to do another film that also paints that picture in March. So we'll be announcing that here within the next week or so. But right now, March 7th, March 28th, that's when we'll do a call for those heirlooms again. And then in May, that's when we'll do the final exhibition.
Well, I'm so excited for all that you all are doing. I think this is a wonderful addition to the city, and that people will really value this opportunity that you're giving them. And again, to create this archive with photos for free is an amazing opportunity. So thank you so much for sharing it with us. Hopefully, by having this time here, more people will hear about it, to give you a call to be there with you on Saturday.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And thank you so much for having us and highlighting this work. This means more than our words can even express. Thank you so much.
Certainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
My best to you. Take care.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
It's about 3:15, everyone. I think that's so cool. And it is true that, we're always going in so many different directions, and we're at a generation where a lot of us don't sit down at the table with our families as much anymore. That having an opportunity like this to say, no, let's go there and let's stop. Let's just take a beat. all together and let's chat. And let's take these pictures. You will value them so much in years to come for just taking that beat right now. Let's take a 2-minute beat and we'll be right back. All right. We're back at 3:18. Let's see here. Is this, maybe it's my, yeah, I can't hear myself, but I think you all can hear me. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Now we're cooking with fish grease. I can hear myself. All right. So we're back at 3:18, everybody. Let's go ahead and bring in our next guest. We are getting in some information today that the average rate on the popular 30-year fixed mortgage has fallen to its lowest level since 2022. And so I want to welcome in our next guest so that we can talk a little bit about what's going on. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Okay, in your field, in seeing the rates drop to this level, was it surprising to you, or were we kind of gradually getting to this point?
Rates have been gradually falling since around September, but I thought that they would have already leveled off. It was a bit surprising to see them drop below the 6% mark yesterday. And I think that is a meaningful threshold. It matters when people see that it's 5.99% now for a 30-year fixed rate as opposed to above 6%.
Wow. Okay. And what should people in the home market, and I say home market because I would like to hear both sides of it from buyers and sellers, what should they be taking from this?
Well, if you are looking to buy a home, you should know that it is now more affordable. If you're borrowing to buy a home, that mortgage rate is lower, which means your monthly mortgage payment will be lower. And when you compare it to how high mortgage rates were last year, you're saving a significant amount of money, potentially tens of thousands of dollars in terms of what you can afford on the total purchase price. So hopefully that means more buyers will feel like now is a good time to buy, which would also be good news for sellers who are having a bit more trouble finding buyers nowadays than they were during or before the pandemic.
Yeah, Daryl, I mean, when you say before the pandemic, like it's been some long years for people, and would you say this is maybe the best time to buy that we've seen in a while, or were there some other times since the pandemic where you saw kind of a silver lining?
Whether or not now is a good time to buy is definitely going to depend on your personal situation. If you feel secure in your job and you have a long-term goal of wanting to own a home, I would say go for it, because right now it is a buyer's market. You can get an offer accepted, you can dictate the terms, you can have that inspection done, and you don't have to rush the way that you would have had to rush during the pandemic. But a lot of people are having trouble meeting that threshold of even being able to afford home ownership, and renting remains the more affordable option. So I think for some people, they're just going to think that renting is the best way to go for the time being.
I think that's excellent advice, because a lot of times people don't consider all of the things that go into making that huge purchase. So maybe let's take a moment and talk a little bit more about that. Like, sure, get excited about a low interest rate here for mortgage rates, but what are the other things? You mentioned having a stable job. That is really important. But what are some other things that people should really make sure are solid in their lives, or that they compile before stepping into the market?
Well, the first thing is to make sure that you're ready to commit. Usually people start making money off of owning a home versus renting a home after they've been in the home for 5 years. So if you can't see yourself being in that home for 5 years at least, it's probably more financially prudent to keep renting. And that depends on like whether you're ready to settle down or not, whether you feel good about your job, or whether you'd rather have the flexibility to pick up and move to a new city for a new job opportunity. But if you are in that phase of life where you want to settle down, you want to start a family, then that could mean that you are ready to buy that home. And when you do buy the home, make sure you account for those more hidden costs of home ownership, like maintenance and property taxes, so you have everything covered in terms of what you can afford.
And do you think that with the drop in rates, we'll see more refinancing? And what do you think is behind the rate drop?
I do think that we will see more refinancing. There are so many homeowners where their primary mortgage is at a really great rate, under 4%, and they don't want to move and give up that rate, but they can take out a home equity line of credit if they wanted to modify the home, do some renovations, and turn it into the home that they really do want to stay in. Now, why rates are falling, there's not like a clear explanation. I mean, rates are definitely dependent on the entire global economy. There's a lot of uncertainty in the global economy that could be pushing rates down, but there really isn't just one thing. It's more part of a longer term trend. Inflation is still a problem, so it's possible rates could go back up, which is one reason to be a bit more speedy and take advantage of these low rates, because they might not last forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you work with Redfin. We're going into March, next week. Is the spring like the optimal time for a lot of people? I mean, is that a hot time for you all?
Yes, usually spring is when home buying season starts. A lot of people try to time their moves for the summer because the weather is better and kids are out of school. So if you're trying to move, that's a good time to do it. That's when there's the most inventory, the most homes for sale available. It's also the time when there are the most buyers looking. So it just tends to be a much more active time in the market compared to fall or winter.
Mm-hmm. Are there some other things that you think are like big topics within your industry right now when it comes to home buying at the moment?
Well, a big topic is new construction. So many markets there's just a lack of affordable housing options. The markets that have become more affordable are the ones that built a lot during the pandemic in terms of building new homes, but new construction has slowed down because of how expensive materials are and because interest rates being higher than they used to be impacts builders and the customers they're trying to sell to. So I think it's important that we keep trying to make it easier to build homes and we embrace new construction because it just means that housing will be more affordable down the line. And we definitely want that for future generations.
And Daryl, let me ask you this. Obviously, we've had a lot of conversations over the last 4 or 5 months about property taxes in Cook County. Do you think that when we have those conversations very loudly, that it keeps people from wanting to get into the market? I mean, because that's something that people struggle with to stay in their homes.
Yeah, I think property taxes aren't necessarily a negative because they go towards things that make neighborhoods more attractive when the money is being spent properly. So I think if people are concerned about property taxes, it probably has more to do with them not really seeing the value returned back to them in terms of, maintenance to the roads or funding for their schools. So I think it's really important that we, hold our leaders accountable and make sure the tax dollars are going to the highest benefit possible, because it's not bad that property taxes exist, but we want to make sure that they're being spent on things that make people's lives better.
Certainly, that's the most important thing there. Okay, Daryl, thank you so much. Daryl Fairweather with Redfin. Thank you. We appreciate being able to call on you yet again.
Thank you.
All right, you take care. Again, everybody, so that Monday's rates went down to 5.99%. As she said, that might be a good moment for you, but there are so many other things other than just the rate to consider before hopping into the housing market. But if you've already got all of those things, you've checked all of those other boxes, 5.99% after what we've seen over the last several months, pretty nice. Happy trails to you if you're in the market. 3:27. Let's take a 2-minute break and we'll be back. 3:29, and we're getting right to our very own Casey Cronus. We have had a lot of conversations about AI, and now the U.S. Postal Inspection Service is helping with these investigations into AI scams. Explain that to us, Casey.
Yeah, that's right. You know, you would typically think that the FBI is investigating these AI scams, and they are the lead agency on those investigations. But when scams involve the mail, that is when the federal postal inspectors get involved. So this afternoon, I sat down with the lead inspector in the crimes division of the United States Postal Inspection Service. We chatted today, and he shared a little bit more about what they are doing to protect consumers. This all comes ahead of National Consumer Protection Week, which begins on Sunday. And he is warning people out there that in 2025 alone, Americans lost $12 billion to these internet scams. He is urging people that if you get a text, an email that includes a tracking number for a package that doesn't quite seem right, or if it is someone posing as being your bank, just know that you need to look further into these things and that they are not always what they seem to be. And Anita, it's not just mail-related scams or fraudsters posing to be postal workers that they investigate, but anytime money is requested to be sent in the mail or it's actually sent in the mail, they have authority to get involved.
Yeah. Did they talk about, did they actually give you some statistics about like how much more they're seeing these or how much more they're being reported?
You know, the problem is with artificial intelligence, these fraudsters have even more tools and these scams look more real. They did tell me that 1 in 5 Americans fall victim to these internet scams. So if you just think about our newsroom, think about 1/5 of the people in that newsroom have potentially fallen victim to these scams. And it's not just the elderly that they are targeting. Inspector Shen told me that it is even young adults who are becoming more susceptible to falling for these types of scams, because it's not just those banking scams or you've received a package scams. It's also romance scams. It's scams asking people to get involved in investment accounts. So just be very careful. We all need to be very careful when we do get a text from a number or an email from an email address that doesn't quite look familiar, or perhaps it looks like it's your bank or it looks like it's a service you use. We've really got to look closely at that to make sure that it is legit.
Yeah, and it goes back into this notion we were just saying a few moments ago with another guest that we had, where we're all moving so quickly. Things can happen so fast. I got one just the other day, and it was like, are you going to work tomorrow?
I know. I'm getting multiple texts a day, voicemails that are clearly scammers trying to take advantage. And what we recommend people do is block those numbers as soon as you get a text or a phone call from one of these scammers. Just block the number. There typically should be an option on your phone too to report something as spam. And on top of that, Inspector Eric Shen from USPIS said that even if you don't fall victim to a scam, they want you to report these to authorities. You can report it to the FBI's Internet Crimes Division. There's a simple form on the website. You can also report it to USPIS. And essentially, they ask that you take screenshots of what you've received. It's as simple as uploading the screenshot, and that will help them target who is behind these scams.
And then there's I think, when we talk about the rise of these types of scams, we're always like reactive in a sense to them, you know? By the time they get to where they are, we're kind of just following up. And the scammers have moved on to a whole new thing.
Yeah, it's true. And, this is the type of thing that the inspector that I spoke with said he wants consumers to get ahead of this, right? Get ahead of those scammers. Now, one thing that you can do is, in order to find out what type of packages, what type of mail you're expecting to get, you can sign up for USPS's Informed Delivery Service. So you'll never get a text saying, here's your tracking number, your package is running behind, click here and pay this extra fee. He said you'll never get a text from the post office asking for extra money. Anyone can sign up for informed delivery. I do it essentially every morning. I get an email with the packages and the mail. It includes scanned images of what mail I'm expecting to get that day so that you know exactly what to expect in your mailbox, and you don't need to even look at these texts that you get claiming to be the post office. That's one way to get ahead of it in terms of those mail scams, but he does urge consumers to just do a little bit of their own research, especially because National Consumer Protection Week starts Sunday. It's a good reminder on what to look out for.
I have that informed delivery too. It is very helpful, except for the fact that you get so many emails. Again, you could still easily fall victim. And if you do fall victim, did they tell you what's your course of action?
This is when you really want to report it to authorities. You know, we're guilty. I'm guilty of this too, is I'll get these texts and I'll just block them, report them as spam. They want you to report even the text that you don't fall victim to. But if you do fall victim to it, because sometimes that can, you know, it can be a lot of work. We're getting a lot of these texts. But if you do fall victim, that's when you really have to report it to the authorities. So you can report that to FBI and USPIS. If it involves your bank in any way, if you've sent any money, report it to your bank as soon as possible. If the transaction hasn't gone through yet, Inspector Shen said that sometimes the bank is able to stop it in its tracks. And then you really also, he said, don't be ashamed. Come forward. It can help other people if you talk about what happened. It can help people you know and love avoid falling victim as well.
And when you mentioned not being ashamed, did they give you any idea of like worst case scenarios that they have seen thus far?
You know, he didn't get into worst case scenarios, but he said the top scams right now, let me pull up the list for you here. The top scams are romance scams, investment scams, cryptocurrency, and impersonation. So I'll say that one more time: romance, investment, cryptocurrency, and impersonation. So those are the top scams right now. As you mentioned, Anita, the fraudsters are always evolving. They're using AI to help them do this. So right now, that's what to look out for. But again, tomorrow, next week, it could be something else.
It definitely will be. And as you're even doing that list, or I'm thinking about different stories that we've done just recently. Of course, Terrence Lee had that story, romance story about a man losing, I think, was it $70,000 he lost?
It was. And that is a perfect example. And we'll be sure to link that in our story today so that anyone who missed that can take a look. But someone who really thought that he was speaking to a person that was falling for him and he was falling for them, and he ended up being out $70,000.
Yeah. And I know Terrence spoke with you about it when you were filling in here. Then there, I think about crypto, and I immediately think of Nancy Guthrie. You know, that family still, I mean, just this morning, they increased the reward to like $1 million that they're willing to pay someone to bring their mother home. But the element of crypto that got even introduced into this.
Exactly. And now it's so easy for people to fall victim to these scams, especially if someone is being impersonated and you think it's someone official that's reaching out to you, or you think it's someone you love reaching out to you. You know, we've heard about those scams where people are actually using AI to fake the voices of loved ones based on internet content that they've posted. And people are getting calls saying, "Mom, it's me, you know, I need this much money wired." These are all things that we need to be aware of. And as technology gets better, there will only be more things that we need to look out for.
Yeah. And I know that typically, you know, the USPIS, they're very, you know, very structured. But did they at all talk about just the changing landscape, the changing nature of the job that they do, that this is where they are, the types of scams they're trying to track down versus what they would 5, 10, 20 years ago?
I think AI is the biggest part of that. Inspector Shen was saying that the USPIS has always been involved in inspecting and investigating fraud. But nowadays, with the digital world we live in, it is a changing landscape. And just as much as the FBI needs to stay up to speed on what fraudsters are using, postal inspectors do too.
Yeah, so many different things. And I just always say AI fits into every conversation right now. Thank you so much. We'll see you at 4 o'clock for your latest report.
Thanks, Anita.
Absolutely. We definitely don't want anyone to fall victim to one of these. And it is just so crazy how advanced things and how quickly things advance. You know, not just how advanced they are, but how quickly things advance. So that makes it incumbent upon us to continue to get that information out as often as possible, what the scams look like, at least as of today, before they change tomorrow, so that you always have your antennas up, and hopefully none of us fall victim to it, but to also know what course of action you need to take should that happen to you, and to not feel ashamed, because it can happen so easily. It's about 3:41 right now. We're going to take a 2-minute break and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. 3:43, and we're taking a look at how things closed for the day for the stock market. Oh, look at that. Oh, it is a much different picture than this time yesterday, everybody. So let's talk a little bit about it. First and foremost, what's going on today. So as you can see, a lot of green on the screen. The S&P 500 advanced 0.77%. The NASDAQ composite rose 1.04%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average adding more than 370 points, as you can see there on your screen, or 0.76%. This is a good look here. This is a good look. This is what we want to see. And I'm sure, honestly, what President Trump wants to see ahead of his big speech, the State of the Union tonight. These equities rising today after a brutal day yesterday. I could only imagine having a conversation right after that if the State of the Union were yesterday and there was just so much unease in the market, so much red on the screen, only a blip of green that we saw yesterday, but things stocks are bouncing back as of today. And, we were just having the conversation about AI, in fact, with our own Casey Cronus, and some of this has to do with fears easing around artificial intelligence for certain industries. But if we go back to the conversation yesterday, when we saw the market close, those major averages fell on Monday with the renewed AI disruption concern. So President Donald Trump's threat to hike global tariffs to 15% was also another key element into what we saw yesterday. It will be a key element for him to address tonight, and it will especially be interesting to see him address that aspect of things in terms of the economy, the global tariffs, in front of the justices who made that huge decision on Friday morning that the Emergency Powers Act was actually illegally used for global tariffs, but President Trump found a new way. And so 10% U.S. tariffs took effect on today. So, again, we see green on the screen. There's still some uncertainty out there. There was a lot of tension, and uncertainty again surrounding U.S. and Iran that kept traders on edge over the last couple of days. But again, this is kind of the picture that, of course, the president want to see ahead of his big speech tonight, where by all measures, everything that I'm seeing, every indicator that I'm seeing is that the economy is the top topic that people want to hear him really go into detail about. And of course, the tariffs will be a part of that, how he sees them versus what's going on, and both nationally and internationally, to bring in and to export money from this country and goods from this country. So we'll see where things go. Again, on the heels of the speech tomorrow, we'll see kind of a reaction to what he has said tonight tomorrow when we look at the picture. But when we preview and when we get ready for the speech tonight, which he's always promised will be a long one. He's already promised that it will be a long speech tonight. So just soak it in, get ready for a long speech tonight. But do know that, we're going to be recapping it tomorrow. But we do know that there will be a long speech tonight for the president, but he has very important topics that we all should be tuned in for. And we're going to carry it on Fox Chicago. We'll have Paris Schutz staying late tonight so that he can be a part of the analysis once it's over this evening. And we do anticipate it's going to end around 9:30 p.m. So it's going to be a late night, but it's going to be an important night for all Americans to tune in and find out what the president has to say about where we are in the country and how we are moving forward. Now, one of the elements when you talk about the economy that becomes very important are the jobs numbers. And we're seeing some shifting data when it comes to jobs and employees versus employers in this country. In fact, there is a term, job recalibration, that we're going to talk about right now with Lauren Winans, who is an expert in the topic, an expert in the field. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So what is job recalibration?
Well, it's definitely a new buzzword, another buzzword for us to have in the labor market. I mean, ultimately what job recalibration is, we, over the last handful of years, have kind of, the pendulum has swung in one direction and it's kind of coming back the other direction as it relates to the job market. Mm-hmm. And so what we're experiencing right now is a recalibration in the workforce. So whereas, over the past handful of years, due to the pandemic and maybe some other factors, we had seen that jobs, there were more job openings than there were people who were actually in the workforce able to take those jobs. And now kind of we're swinging the pendulum the other direction, where there are less job openings and more job seekers. And so this recalibration is fairly natural, but, it's also just part of, what comes after a very large event that affects the workforce the way this has.
Yeah, when you talk about buzzwords, and you mentioned there that there are, fewer openings compared to people seeking, I think about the another job buzzword that we heard, which was job hugging.
Yes. Yeah, job hugging. There's a lot of people right now who, are really craving stability, in a time where, the economy is, a bit uncertain, maybe not completely uncertain, but there is some uncertainty that exists. And, in those moments, most people are kind of clinging to their job. And that's where that term job hugging comes from. You have many people who might be interested in making a move and moving to another position, but there's a lot of factors at play that maybe prevent them personally from making that leap, and stability being one of those. So there's a lot of job huggers out there right now, which, really kind of slows down, the hiring process and the hiring market, because there's less openings for employers to fill.
Yeah, it's scary to make a leap when you don't feel like the ground is solid underneath you. Is that a part of the stay put behavior?
It is. I think there's a variety of things at play here, right? There's things are more expensive. Families, have to come up with extra dollars every month to make ends meet. And, while in some cases it might make sense to make a move to maybe increase your wages, elsewhere, sometimes the easiest thing to do is to hang on and hang in there and, keep a solid footing in your current role, because it's better to have a job than not have a job. And so, I think that's just, ultimately, I think that makes perfect sense for the average American to think that way. And I do think that is, ultimately what's kind of leading to a little bit of a stagnation in movement across the labor market.
Yeah, my dad is in his 70s, and he calls it the bird in the hand. He always is bird in the hand.
There's something to be said for that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, and there's also a different way of looking at internal candidates versus external candidates I'm seeing these days.
Absolutely. I think that employers are being very intentional and strategic about their hiring decisions. They're really, taking a look at the different applicants that they have for each role that's coming in. And, I think ultimately they're able to be, a little more choosy. They're able to really kind of pick and choose who are the right people to bring into their workplace. In some cases, employers are even looking to say, hey, I would rather promote internally than even look outside the organization, because, I think there's another expression, I'm sure I'm going to get it wrong, but, it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't know.
Yeah.
And so I think it really comes down to, employers not necessarily, wanting to risk it by going out to market, and rather kind of look internally for that talent, which is really making, the movement in the labor market that much harder.
Mm-hmm, yeah, let's use all of the buzzwords here. So there's also the devil is in the details. And so does that make salary negotiations harder? I mean, and flexibility more difficult when we have a market or an environment like this?
It does. I think that, professionals, employees at any, stage in their career growth or the career path. I mean, I just, there's some wage slowdown here. And so the leverage that you may have had a few years ago, that leverage, while it's still not completely gone, there's less leverage. And so I think it's really important to, in a situation like this, is be able to quantify your results, be able to show that you are, performing well, be able to upskill yourself, really take a look at different skills that you can add to your own skill set, so that you can, definitely be a much more marketable individual, not only externally, but internally, kind of building that visibility internally of the things that you're doing and the things that you're doing well. Being able to showcase your ROI is going to be what helps you to leverage yourself when it comes to negotiating pay or an increase in your salary.
Mm-hmm. And does all of this mean that employers have a little bit more power right now than employees? I feel like there is a generational difference in the way we look at that. And like the younger generation, Gen Z and whatever comes behind them, I don't know what the next term is, but that they have come out of school or been raised to feel like they're kind of in the driver's seat. But are we in an environment where no, actually the employers are?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think that optically it does feel like the employers have the leverage at the moment. But, I would argue, kind of going back to, the start of the conversation around recalibration, I think the pendulum swings one direction, it swings back, and then it balances, right? It kind of settles in the middle. I think we're on that swing back from one end to the balance, between the two. And, with that said, I think right now the employers are definitely feeling a little more on top than they had been the last few years. But I do think that, those folks who are entering the workplace, maybe coming right out of college or, maybe even some folks who are fairly new, maybe have been in the workforce for a couple of years. I think the mentality of entitlement is certainly not something that you can rest your hat on any longer. I do think that there is a shift in concept here, and really trying to, organizations are really looking for performance and value, and employees who are really able to move the needle. And so, a change in perspective for Gen Z and maybe, even younger generations is going to be necessary in order to continue to compete in this labor market, especially as technology evolves and AI becomes more integral in all of our lives.
An important word from a workplace and HR expert herself. Thank you so much, Lauren, for joining me here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. 3:56. Give us 2 minutes and we'll be back to close out the show. All right, welcome back, everyone. Again, the President's State of the Union address is tonight at 8 p.m. The coverage is expected to go until about 9:30 or so. We are going to have it on Fox Chicago. We'll be talking about much of it tomorrow as well. But let's tune in. Let's all be informed. And I'm going to send you over to First at 4 right now. Make sure you join us from 1 to 4 again tomorrow.
Live from Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
Let's catch up, friends. You may have been overcharged for parking tickets in Chicago. Could you be issued a refund?
AI scam.